All right, welcome back to another TouchDesigner tutorial. Today we are going to be making this visualizer with chopping up some audio, and happy to be playing one of my tracks here, but we can use a TouchDesigner file, and basically we're just going to be parsing some audio, doing some different things. And a little close look at our network here is we are going to be chopping the audio using some audio spectrums, taking that into some textures, bringing that into some SOPs, and then doing some feedbacks and some compositions at the end, and then combining to make something look like this. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to close out of this and recreate it. And the first thing we're going to do is go to our component here and add a base. I'm just going to name this example. And we're going to go inside of it and we're going to start building this out. So the first thing we need to do is get some audio, since obviously we're doing some chopping of some audio. So we're going to bring this audio file in, and we are going to add a math right to it. And in this math, we are going to go to combine channels to add. And I'm also going to add an audio device out. And I'm going to turn this off, but I am going to bring this in. I am then going to turn down the volume on this because my setup is a little bit different. I'm going to turn this on. It's going to sound always lovely. And I'm going to push this into my audio interface there. Little thing I'm trying to figure out how to fix. But anyway, so we're going to just keep going into the nodal networks here. So outside this math, we came in here, we did an add, and then we are going to bring in an audio spectrum. So kind of like we did with the Pac-Man example, I'm going to do some of the same things here. I'm going to select 1024 for this. I'm going to turn this down to 0. And I am going to then, after this, going to add a resample. And we're going to kind of, again, adjust a little bit here in what we're doing. And first, actually, I'm going to put, before the resample, I'm going to add a math, because I know that I'm going to want to increase this a little bit. So in this math, I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to go into the math. I'm going to change the multiply to 2 or 4, whatever number I feel like putting in, I guess. I'm going to go into my resample and do kind of like we did in the last tutorial, but also just in this section to kind of take a little bit of a look. I'm going to turn time slice off. I'm going to go to resample. I'm going to select new rate, new interval. I'm going to go to absolute. I'm going to change, slide this over since we're not seeing everything here, and change this to samples. And I'm going to change this to 119. So that's 0 to 120, 120, right? Again, TouchDesigner with the zeros instead of the ones. After my resample, I am going to take this into a null. And this is where some of the fun begins. But before we do that, talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to take this audio analysis tool out of the palette here. I'm going to bring this over because I'm going to use this to also do some different things. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a math right off the bat. I'm going to add a rename. I'm going to add a leg just in case I want to use that later. I'm going to add a null. And actually, let's just slide this on over here for a section. What? And I'm going to move this back. Or I'll just leave it there because I want to add a note in here. And I don't think I gave myself enough room. But I'm going to add a select so I can pick what thing I want out of the audio spectrum. And there's some different ways you can do it, but I just kind of like to, again, have kind of like a clean order here. Slide this thing back. And I'm going to select for this, I'm going to select the low. And now we can see some data coming here. We're going to change some of this down the road. But this just gives me an opportunity as I showed in the example, right? So after our null here, we're going to take this null, we're going to do a chop to, because we're going to take the audio and push it out into our textures. So the first thing we're going to do is go to 32-bit float. So now you see we have some colors going on in here. And we are going to split this out again, and we're going to go to a level. And outside of our level, we are going to change a couple things. We're going to change our brightness to 3, our gamma to 3, and our contrast to 3, right? So we're bringing up these values, as you see, from right here to right there. And we're also going to take this and push this out into a math. And in our math, I'm going to change the multi-add to 4 to give a little bit more signal there. And then I'm going to take this and push this into a null. And actually, I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to add a limit right here because I want to limit some of this, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to clamp the value, and then I'm going to push it out. So in here, I'm going to take this, I'm going to go to clamp. I'm going to change this to go to 0 to 1. And now you can see it's pushing, and it's clamping, and then it's multiplying it, right? So since I already did this tutorial once, I kind of know a little bit about what I did. I'm trying to recreate it to the best of my knowledge. So another thing we're going to do is here, we are going to add a noise. We're going to bring this into the noise. We're going to take this noise and we're going to switch this to 32-bit float. We're going to change the period on this noise to 0.02, or we're going to change it to 2, one of those numbers, so we have a smaller period here. And then we're going to turn monochrome on, so we have our little color spectrum right there, right? So we can see what we're going to do. And outside of that noise, we are going to go into a math. So like we talked about a little bit, is love to do some math in the TouchDesigners. But what we're going to do in our range is, because of the XY axis, and we're going into 3D, we're not hitting Z yet. We're going to do that in another tutorial coming up soon. But we are going to, again, we want to play in the XY axis, and we don't just want to play in the one corner of it. We want to play in the full spectrum of it. So we're going to go to our range from 0 to 1. We're going to go to -1. And then outside of that, we are going to go into this, into a null. We're going to name this null position. And we are going to name this one scale. Right? So what do we do now? We're going to add, in the example, I used a sphere, but we're going to try a box here. So we're going to add a box. We're going to do a transform. And we're going to do a null. And we're going to bring this into our geometry. So gotta love a good geometry, right? So we're bringing in the geometry. We're going to create this network. And we are also going to, anytime we add a geometry, since it's in 2D, we got to bring it, or it's in 3D, we got to bring it out. So we have to have a camera to look at it. We need to add a render so we can render that back out from the 3D plane into the 2D plane. And then we want to give this, instead of a light, we're going to give it a constant. And we're going to take the constant here, we're going to drag it on there, and we're going to farm the material, right? So now we can see our box. And I'm going to drag an out here, put it way over here, maybe even farther, right? Because I'm going to add some other things. I'm going to turn this on so now we can see the box in the screen, okay? So box is pretty big, so we're going to scale this down. We'll scale this down to 0.02. So now we have a little box just sitting in there, just sitting in space, right? And we can adjust that, and that's going to be part of what we're going to be doing. But right now, I don't need it that big. So in my geometry, I'm going to go to instance, and I'm going to turn instancing on, and I'm going to drag what I just named in the translate position over here. I'm going to pick my X to the R. I'm going to slide my screen back over. I don't know why it keeps moving over there. And then I'm going to pick my Y into the G, and look at that. We have some boxes moving in space, and you can see what's going on here. It's going all crazy, right? It's super exciting. But we're going to take that, and this is one of the things that if you, by turning monochrome on the noise, so we're giving that different color spectrum in the space. We turn this off, you can see how they all line up. And so it's positioning based on color within 3D space, okay? So we're going to take that, and then we're going to do one more thing is we're going to go into our scale here. We're going to bring our scale over, and we are going to select the R, and we are going to select the R. So now we have things scaling up and down. This is super, super exciting, right? And this kind of gives you, again, we're going to play with some numbers. We're going to adjust how much we want of these things, but we're just trying to kind of recreate a little bit of what we had before. And so this is some of the things that I'm going to adjust, right? So as we go in here, one of the first things that I want to do is create another feedback network. And we did this before, and I've done this in a couple of different tutorials, and there's many ways to do it. And you can go over here and use some of these in the palette, but I'm just going to recreate it. So at the end of this chain, I'm going to add a null. I start to build off my feedback network. Oops. And I'm going to select here feedback. And everything stops, right? Because it's not feeding back, because it needs some more things going on in here. I'm going to select a level. In this level, I'm going to change the post, the opacity to 0.8. It's a lovely number. And then I'm going to add a blur after this. And in my blur, I'm going to change the filter size to something large, right? Like a 30. This is going crazy here. And we're going to bring in, after this, a composite to blend our networks together. So we're going to bring this into here. Now we can see some things, and this is kind of a cool look too, like that. But we're going to composite this, and we're going to bring this as an over. So now we have some things happening, right? This is super, super exciting. But what we have to do is, those aren't obviously feeding back because they're stuck in space. We got to drag this comp back onto our feedback. And now we see what's happening here, right? This is weird. Okay. Sometimes when I do the screen share thing, it just wants to reorganize my nodes. But whatever. So we're going to keep moving on here. So I love a nice edge. And this is one of my favorite things, is to bring things into the edge and kind of work like that, because I don't want to see all that stuff, and that just happens to be a part of my aesthetic. But the other thing too is I'm going to add a displace here, and in this displace, I'm going to put it here. I'm going to bring this displace into here, then I'm going to add another noise, because everyone loves noise, and I especially do. So now we have this nice little palette here that I love fluids, and I love how things kind of translate and look in fluids. So this kind of is like the backdrop that I was using before, right? And if I turn this into the monochrome, now I'm bringing some color into it. I turn this common into 32-bit float, and it's looking lovely. It seriously is. But we're displacing this, so we're going to have to bring this in somewhere later. But here's a good thing is, as we make these, and we make some stuff for the Instagrams and share other things and how we want to do them, it's always good to make the handy dandy res constant, and that way we can adjust whatever we're doing down the road, and everything will kind of go to it, right? So we're going to do res x, and I recreate these every time. I don't know why. Res y, I do know why, but I shouldn't. We're going to go 1920 by 1080. I'm going to rename this res. I'm going to do my handy dandy little palette trick to make this black, so now I know this is a reference for me. Black is one of my favorite colors. Did I do one in the last tutorial? I don't know, probably. I think I do them all. So we're going to go back to this render here. Now we're going to take our render, and we're going to go to our common, We're going to take these two values, right? We're going to take our res, we're going to bring it over here, and we're going to bring our other one over here. And now it looks the same, right? But if we wanted to switch this into like the Instagram format, we could obviously switch that up. But why I'm doing this is because in this noise, as you see, this is only 256. So I also want to bring this into the same plane. So we are playing with the same resolutions, and it's not going to shrink it as we push some more things out in the end, right? So we have this. If we turn our edge off, you can see what it was like before, which is a cool effect. But we're going to do some other things here. So what we're going to also do is outside of this, we're going to add a comp per the example that I was doing. And we're going to bring this comp from this other noise into the comp, right? So now we're bringing some colors into it. And how amazing is that? But we have this cool little thing going on here. And so we want to really add this in. So I think what we could do is add another comp here later in the chain, and then we can bring this into this comp, right? So this is bringing our color in. And we're going to leave that as a multiplier, and we're going to bring this displace into here, right? So can't really see what's going on here. If we take this comp and we change this to dimmest, we change this to brightest, now kind of look a little bit like how we started, right? We have some different things going. We got some cubes. We have some of our noise that's doing some things. If we turn on our sound, let's see here. We can see that it's activating to it. I don't know what that terrible noise is, but we'll deal with that later. But you can see that this is a visualizer based on this, right? So in this too, like in my example, I used also a sphere, so we can use something like a sphere and have like a little bit rounder to this, right? So we have our little spheres that are coming out here, and this is really where we could, if we want this like little circle effect, we could always bring these circles in bigger. We can translate this, and this is really this uniform scale that's adjusting a lot of this. So it's just, again, playing with different numbers to kind of go for the aesthetic that you want. Same within the noise. If we change the period on this, we can change how this alters, right? So the other thing why I brought this little thing from the audio analysis was I'm going to, in this transform, I'm going to position here and use this as a translate function. So I'm going to take this, and I'm actually going to rename this now so it doesn't break it. But I'm just going to rename this to noise. And then when I bring this into our noise here, it's always going to have the same reference in our translate. And now it's kind of shifting a little bit based on that noise. So it's kind of pushing across the screen. And this is where the math comes into play, where I could change the range here from 0 to 1 and really start to parse these numbers and change some different things and, you know, go all crazy here. And so we're just creating something. Again, it's up to you what you want to do, and there's multiple different things we can add. We can do our old ABS time dot seconds times, let's say 0.2, add that in there. That's giving some movement. We can change lots of different things. You can change some of these different spectrums and things to add stuff. We can change the values here. This is giving a different look here. Change it to here. This is giving a different look. We can decide whether or not we want to boost some high ends. We can go back into our math and we can change this value, right? So that's altering it slightly. We can go into this math right here. We can change this value, and that's going to drive us from like a little bit of a starry thing to something a little bit more crazy. So this is another thing where you could add this value in, right? Let's say we take this noise right here and we drag it on this multiply. All of a sudden, you know, that's giving some more life into it. And so this is really an example of doing some different things and creating this little artistic, I guess, per se, maybe abstract audio reactive thing. And so we kind of move from there, right? And that is what we were trying to do. We can also increase this sample step here, and this is going to give us a little bit bigger on our circles and things that we are creating too. Okay, so that is it. That is the brief little tutorial, and this is a great playground to play around with and hopefully have some fun. So that is odd. I will talk to you later.